Alrighty, so this will be part 2 of your Chapter 11 homework illustrations in My Accounting Lab. Okay, this is number 6 with your Chapter 11 homework. You're going to be calculating the direct material price variance and the quantity variance. Remember, the price variance is always based on what you purchase, and the quantity variance is based on what you use. Sometimes they call the quantity variance, they refer to that as the efficiency variance sometimes as well. So on the price variance, we need what they purchased. So it looks like, I'm going to go to the last sentence, they purchased 87,500 pounds of clay. Notice that's what you're going to use right here in your calculation. And then you're just going to compare that, what you actually purchased, to the price. You get the standard price. The standard price is $1.96. That's what they got that number. The actual price is where you take the 168, which is the total cost, and divide that by 87,500. That's going to give you $1.92. So they spent $1.92. The standard says you're trying to spend less than 196, which you achieved. That you beat the standard by 4 cents. So the difference between the price is essentially 0.044 cents multiplied by what they purchased. That's going to give you a favorable price variance of $3,500. Now, on the quantity variance, you would use the standard price again, so that's given $1.96. And in this one, you're going to compare what you use to what you should have used, kind of like the flexible budget in Chapter 10. So the problem says they purchased and used 87,500, and I often call this the SQ, the standard quantity. What you do is you take what they produced, which is 3,500 planters, and you're going to multiply that by 24. 24 is the number they would have gotten right up here. That's the standard quantity for each planter. So if you take 35,000 times 24, that's going to give you right at 84,000. That's going to be that number right there. And what that essentially means is if they actually produce 3,500 planters using a standard input of clay of 24 pounds, 84,000 is what they thought they should have used, and then they actually used 87.5, so that's bad. So the difference times that standard price would give you an unfavorable quantity variance of 68.60. Okay, this is number 7 with your Chapter 11 homework. This is going to be your labor variances. You've got the rate variance and the efficiency variance. We'll start with the rate variance. So on the rate variance, you want the actual hours, which is 280. So there's where they're going to pull that number in. And then you're going to multiply that by the difference between what they actually paid and the standard rate of pay. Now the standard wage rate's $15. They gave you that. The actual rate, it looks like they also gave you right here, they actually ended up paying $23 based on 280 hours. So the actual rate is 23. The standard rate's 15. That's $8 difference. 8 times the actual hours, that's going to be an unfavorable rate variance of 22.40. Unfavorable because you actually spent more than the standard. You spent more than the budget. That's not what you'd hope for. So that's why that's unfavorable. All right. Now on the efficiency variance, you're going to be comparing actual hours of 280 versus the standard hours. Again, I refer to this as SQ. That's going to be your 1,100 oil changes, which they gave you right there, multiplied by how many hours it takes to make an oil change, which is 0.35. They gave you this one right there. What they did was they took the 21 minutes and simply divided by 60. They converted that into a fraction of an hour. So 0.35 hours. If you take 1,100 times 0.35, that's going to give you the 385, which is where they got that right there. So they actually worked 280. The standard says you should have worked around 385, so that's a good difference. Like 105 difference times the standard rate gives you a good efficiency variance of 1,575. All right, so on this one, you're going to be doing your variable overhead variances. And so you got a rate variance and an efficiency variance. And on this one, the variable activity is going to be machine hours. They tell you that right up here. So machine hours is our base. So on our rate variance, this works very similar to the labor rate variance, where you need the actual hours. So in this case, actual machine hours of 470. That's where they got that number. And then now we want to know what we actually pay. They're going to give you the rate. So they actually tell you the actual variable overhead rate for the last month was $22, so there's your actual rate. And the standard rate they also gave you right up there, so which is $23. So you beat the standard rate by $1. So the difference 1 times 470 would be a favorable rate variance of 470. Now, on the efficiency variance, you've got actual hours given, 470. You have to calculate the standard quantity again. So somewhere they got to tell you what they produced, and they produced 1,500 tables. And for that, you got to multiply that by the input, which is 0.3 hours. They gave you that, 0.3 hours for each table. That gives you standard input of 450 machine hours. There's your standard machine hours. Actual machine hours, the difference is 20. That's bad because you worked more than you should have worked. Multiply that by your standard rate. You get an unfavorable efficiency variance of 460. All right, this is number 9 on your homework. You've got the budget variance and the volume variance for overhead. So down here, we're going to do the budget variance. That's a pretty simple one. What you do there is you take the actual fixed overhead, which is given. It's given at 85.8. So if you go back up here, it's right there. I'm going to circle that. And then the budgeted fixed overhead, which is also given right there. They just gave it to you. So you actually had fixed overhead of 85.8 versus the budget of 89,000. The difference obviously is a good difference because you incurred less overhead than what you thought you would have by $3,200. Now, the volume variance, you compare the budgeted fixed overhead to what they call the standard allocation, standard fixed overhead allocated to production. And this box over here tells you how to get that number. So what you got to do is, in this problem, you got to look for a production number. It says they produced 2,100 dog houses. I'll write this out. So the actual production was 2,100. If you multiply that by 2 hours of machine time to make a dog house, that's a total of 4,200 hours. So there's where they get that standard hours, just like SQ. You then multiply that by the standard rate of $23 per machine hour. That's where they get this 96.6. That's how they do this allocation. This simple allocation is based on actual production. They gave you that's an actual number. You got 96.6 as your total. You compare that to the budgeted fixed. Now remember, your budgeted fixed is going to be based on budgeted hours, not actual. All right. So the thing that's going to be weird about this one is the 96.6 is more than 89,000. That's a $7,600 difference. You're going to actually stay favorable because the idea is you have to kind of go back to your fixed cost rules. You typically want to have more production than less production because you're utilizing the warehouse more efficiency. So more is better because of fixed costs. If you produce more, your actual fixed cost per unit actually go down. So in this one, you always want this number to be higher than the budget because that's going to tell you that you actually produce more than the budgeted production, which is a good thing. All right, so this is number 10 on your Chapter 11 homework. Again, you're going to be dealing with the material price and quantity variances. This problem looks like they produce rings. And let's see, what else do we know? We know that the direct material standard is 16 grams per alloy ring. The standard cost is $63.30. It says they purchased 16,800 grams at a total cost of $1,061,000. And then they tell you that 16.3 were used to produce 1,000 rings. Question number 1 says, what's the actual cost per ring? All you have to do there is take that 1,061,760 and divide by what they purchased, which is 16.8. That'll give you the actual price, which is $63.20. So now when we get to the price variance, remember the price variance is based on what you purchased. So on your prices, you're going to compare that actual price that we just calculated of $63.20 to the standard price, which they gave you of $63.30. And you want to beat the standard price, which it looks like we beat it by about 10 cents. That's good. The 10 cents times what you actually purchased of 16.8 gives you a positive or a favorable variance of 16.80. On the quantity variance, you're going to be comparing the actual quantity used, which is 16.3. They told you that right up here in the problem. The standard quantity you're going to have to calculate. So we have to find out, well, what did they produce? So when I go back up here, it looks like they produced 1,000 rings. So you're going to take that 1,000 rings and multiply by the standard input, which is 16 grams per ring. So that's where they get that 16,000. That's where they get this number. So they use 16.3. They should have used 16. That's a $300 difference. That's bad. Times the standard price of 63.30 gives you unfavorable quantity variance of 18,990. And the rest of these, I think you can kind of read through and fill in the answers right there for the question number 4.